What up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. It's Monday night when I'm filming this. We are here for our anchor message for the week. This is when we take a look at the spiritual lessons that we're going to be dealing with throughout the next 7 or 8 days or so. It's usually a continuing add-on to our ever-unfolding story. So if you see this at any given point, it might be relevant to you. It really doesn't matter. Time and space are an illusion anyway. It's more about the synchronicity, and spirit is not limited with time and space. So anytime it's relevant, but particularly in context to the lessons we've been recently learning and things that are going to be unfolding, this is this week's lessons. We are pulling from the wild unknown archetypes to get our lessons, and then we hone in with clarification with tarot cards. So today I was a bit busy before I went into work, so I didn't have time to post our reading on Instagram like I usually do midday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'll post it with the photo and all of the written and everything tomorrow, but tonight we'll just talk about it. So we pulled Gnosis. We pulled the village, and we pulled the desert for our archetypes. And then underneath Gnosis, we pulled the Nine of Pentacles, which I love the artwork in this deck for the Nine of Pentacles. Under the village, we pulled Page of Pentacles. And under desert, we pulled Queen of Wands, which this makes me giggle, and I'll tell you why later. And then to cap it all off and round it all off, we got the Star for the Major Arcana. All right, so let us unpack. So just to get started, I felt there was immediate shift in energy. Over the past several weeks, and many times for months and months, we'll pull similar archetypes, and maybe sometimes week after week they'll show up. I know that last Monday we had a grouping of archetypes that was a culmination of the previous 3 weeks. And so to me, it was like we were coming to the conclusion of a lesson or a pattern that we'd been, working with for a long time, or especially recently, it's just been crunch time, final exam kind of thing, where you have to put all of your knowledge and wisdom from that experience in to just sort of bring the thing to conclusion and culmination. So I feel like we just got out of a big tiring ending to a huge major cycle. And that's really what that Sagittarius full moon was. It was that last release and the washing away and the culmination and completion of all of the, it was when the symphony or the opera's ending, I don't know which piece of me. Oh, I think it's actually from Verdi's Requiem, but it's ding, 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 ding. And then it's the whole crazy culminating crescendo is happening. So now it's the dust is settled from the full moon a week ago, and now it's we have these different archetypes this week suddenly. Even our Sunday night reading yesterday for the weekly oracle energy forecast, it was a whole nother energy. It was just suddenly the clouds had parted and the sun had come out. It was just a breath of fresh air. But it's sort of the kind of day where the sun comes out and you're oh, the clouds have parted, and it's a breath of fresh air, except you've been through World War I and you're just covered in mud and blood and just soot, and you're just oh my God, I've been eating dead rats out of a trench for months now. Oh, the sun. I'm so excited. The war's over. I'm so tired. I need to pull myself together again. So there's like this little bit of that feeling. Otherwise, I think we're feeling really excited, really ready for new beginnings, new cycles to start, new energy coming in. I think we're just like pulling the pieces back together, just feeling still a little bit tired from the long journey. So yeah, I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling like this is sort of like us like breaking out onto a new leg, a new adventure, because we've got Gnosis with 9 of Pentacles. Gnosis, and I'll read it from the book, but just to give you a general overview, it has to do with the learned experience that you have that brings you your wisdom and discernment and understanding and your truth. This is like when Jesus said, you will live the truth and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And what he's saying there is that there are certain things that you can talk about and theoretically, and you can, ponder it. You can intellectually grasp a concept, but until you have really lived through the experience firsthand and seen it for yourself, it's not real for you. It's not true. And it's not, you don't own that truth. So it's not deep in your bones, like with certainty. It's like, so we have a bunch of new people at work, and we're training all these different people, and all these different people are training all these different people. And when you work at certain places, this might be the same for everywhere you go, but there are certain quirks and kinks to the building and the office and the machinery and the things and the processes and the way they work. And everyone has learned how to sort of engineer things in your own unique particular way to make sure that it functions properly. But it's like, that like, okay, I know it doesn't make sense, but just take my word for it. It has to be this way. You have to do it like this, or the thing will break, or like it'll fall down, or like it won't go through the right way in the system. And so you try to set people up for success, but they don't believe you until they try it, and they have to learn from their own mistake. And then they have to try to figure out all the ways that they're going to try to troubleshoot it are already ways that everybody else has tried to troubleshoot it. And it's not until they finally come to the conclusion that they're like, oh yeah, that is the only way that cabinet will work that way. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, we right now have this sort of feeling like, I don't know, I feel almost disoriented amount of like a disorienting amount of calmness and just lack of response to things that would normally, I don't know, ruffle my feathers or get me worried or make me want to react or even make me feel so tempted. But yeah, it's like this character paired with the Gnosis card. The 9 of Pentacles usually depicts a woman who's alone in a garden, and she has a bird on her finger, and she's wearing ornate garments, but she is solitary, but she has like a fertile crop behind her. And the card talks about like a single, usually stable person. But I like to, you may not be a single person, right? So I like to think of it as a person who has a strong and healthy sense of independence or interdependence, when you relate with others. So this is an independent character with stability and security and inner strength. And the concept that we've been talking about, certainty with a capital C. Certainty is this quality of faith that is faith beyond reason. It's beyond belief, beyond hope. It's something like a knowing in your bones. It's Gnosis. That no matter what the circumstances are, the Creator is involved. And it's almost like the only reason the challenges are playing out in the first place is just to help us remember that the Creator is within all things, omnipresence everywhere. And so the moment that we recognize that and we name it and claim it, we can activate it within any situation. So even in times of difficulty, even in times of inconvenience, if you stay in a state of certainty, like, okay, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen or how this is going to play out, but I just know everything's going to be fine. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to delegate this to Creator, do my best to show up 100%, stay present, stay involved, keep giving to the situation the way I need to, or walk away, whatever needs to happen. But you are certain that even though you don't know the outcome and you're not attached to an outcome, you know that the highest good of all is possible because the Creator is involved. Now, it's not really the same. It doesn't work like that if you lock yourself up in scarcity and start having like all kinds of fears and doubts, and you start being reactive and you start messing up and you start, it starts snowballing, and then you start spiraling in anxiety, and just things start like one thing after another kind of thing. So you see how that works. It's like you have to use your free will in order to activate that power. Now, many times we have grace and mercy that is shown to us by the Creator, knowing that we need training wheels, right? Moments to be grateful for, the mercy, right? But the stronger that we become, the less we have to rely on those miracles. Because, when we draw on those miracles and we live in a state where we're just relying on them, it's like you're taking energy from banks that you've been filling, right? And so it's like building, it's like racking up debt. It's like putting things on a credit card, or like buying things out of your debit card, but like you're not putting back in the energy, right? So like sometimes God will intervene and there will be a divine intervention moment and a miracle will happen. But it's like usually those are moments that happen because you have certain destiny points on your path that must occur. Otherwise, it's like we are in between those points, and it's kind of up to us to involve our heavenly help and ask for it, right? And activate those things. So yeah, we do. It is kind of up to us to use our knowledge and our wisdom and embody that. It's part of the soul correction. It's part of the process of this life. It's part of the cost of our rent of being here, is being mindful about who we're becoming and how we're showing up and how we're transcending and evolving our soul while we're here. So Gnosis, with this card, it's like, wow, suddenly we've woken up and we feel like we can really handle everything, and we feel really like strong and emotionally sober and independent, and like we're just like, all right, we're ready for it. Like we're ready to set out on this new journey. Which brings us to the village. So the village, instantly what came to mind is Joseph Campbell. He writes about myth and the archetypal truth of myth, and the hero and the hero's journey, and the hero has many faces. And so the hero represents the self, us, and the hero's journey is the journey that we all are invited to in this world, to go on the path of that soul correction, to elevate and transcend the layers of ego, and to reintegrate all the fragmented parts of the self and bring it back together. So we're all invited to take that hero's journey, that adventure, right? But we don't all take it. We don't all take that invitation, because it requires that we leave the village. And the village can represent many things. The village can represent both a community or a group that we leave. When I think of the village, I think of the culture that we grew up in, the assumptions and projections that were placed upon us, And it includes like your immediate family, your immediate community and friend circle and tribe, but also the tone of society at the time that you were the most impressionable, right? What shaped you to go out into the world and be your own person. And so when we go out, when we leave the village, it's like we're answering the call in some way. And it doesn't mean that we're like literally moving from our hometown. But it does mean that mentally we're breaking free of the group think that we were conditioned to be a part of. And we all have it to some degree. But we have to do this in order to find like our own relationship with our Creator and our own relationship with our soul and how we see life and our philosophy of life and our spiritual relationship to Source and Creator. You know, your parents may be able to give you church and they may be able to give you that value and those habits, but you have to develop your own relationship and your own idea of the spirit, right, that you're communicating with and who's moving in and out of your life on your behalf and for you and through you. Yeah, and what's driving you, really? So the village, you know, it can have its shadow side and its light side. Because the village, in many ways, it gives you your foundation. It gives you morals and ethics and values and your character, right? And it gives you support and community and intimacy and, you know, deep friendships and bonds and things like that. However, on the dark side, the village can be constraining and constricting and small-minded and backward thinking and wanting to hold people back and, you know, kind of that haterade energy of, oh, you got too big for your britches, like hating on people for expanding or elevating beyond a certain thinking even. You know, even when you start to think a different way, but you're in the same group of people, sometimes they don't like it. And they're like, oh, I like the old person, the old you. That was more, you know, that more along the lines of our thinking. And now I'm challenged to have to expand out of my comfort zone now. And I don't like that. Or I'm threatened because you are. And you're going to grow bigger than me and away from me. So sometimes the village can hold you back. But sometimes the village can encourage you and support you to go out further, right? So there's elements of the village that we're always wrestling with and working with. And another thing that I thought was interesting about this card is that this morning there was this big racket outside of my house. And I don't know, those of you who are like tuning into this regularly enough, you might have caught on to the pattern that even though I live on a quiet street, there's just always so much commotion and construction and city like things going on and like maintenance. And I'm like, why? What am I in the epicenter of? So today it was tree work trucks. And they had to like start just like really early in the morning and get really loud. And so I came downstairs and I pulled my blinds up and I look out the window and there's this tree truck pulling up right at that moment. And it's like one of those random like one-off businesses that's like Exodus Tree Service. And it was like Exodus 1819. And I was like, oh. And I was like, oh wait, I should look up Exodus 1819. And it's the part where it talks about Moses talking to his father-in-law. And the father-in-law noticed that Moses, after having brought the Israelites out of Egypt in the Exodus, right? We just went through that Exodus, right? We went through Passover where we were given the chance to break free from the binds and the chains and the things that kept us enslaved and bound, like our habits, our addictions, the old village, right? And so Moses, they just left and they were making their exodus like we have just done through the eclipse season, through the Omer, through Mercury retrograde, actually like leaving those things behind, going through the process of trying to give them up, right? Like for instance, if it was a literal addiction, it'd be like going through that withdrawal and those first several weeks of like the most difficult parts. And so in the passage in these two chapters, Moses' father-in-law Jethro was like, hey, I noticed you're judging these people all day long, like not like in a critical way, but he was like, but you're like leading them through this journey, and then in all of your off time you're sitting there and people are coming to you for counsel. And he was like, aren't you getting tired? And Moses was like, yeah, but like they need me, they come to me to like deal with these disputes. And he was like, and they want to know what God wants them to do. And Moses was the prophet, and he didn't even want to be the leader. It's just like that, like it was thrust upon him. Most great sages and prophets don't want the position, right? There's an archetype called the reluctant Messiah, because it's a heavy burden to bear. And so Moses was presiding over everyone's beefs like all day long, just like mediating. I wonder if he was a Libra. And, you know, telling them like the ways of God and like what God would want them to do in the situation. And then Jethro was like, wait, okay, you're going to burn out. Why don't you, there's too many people. Why don't you get the most wise and the most like learned high priests that you can gather and train them in your ways in the priesthood? Because Moses was given the Kabbalah. He sat with it and was given the Kabbalah in Egypt. Adam was given the Kabbalah in the garden. Abraham was given the Kabbalah and it was passed down, right? And so Moses had to teach all of these high priests. And then Jethro was like, and the priests will have priests under them. And then, you know, so they can deal with like the thousands and then the hundreds. And then there will even be people that are like sectioned off for like groups of tens of people. So they assigned these schools of priesthoods to rule and, you know, kind of like mentor and shepherd these people in an organized fashion, so that Moses could be the leader over them all. And if anybody had trouble and they had any difficult issues that needed to go to the Supreme Court, they would go to Moses. And Moses was like, yeah, that's a good idea. That'll probably help me from burning out. So he set aside this grouping of people that were called aside for the priesthood. Again, the people that leave the village are called out of the village. Not everyone leaves the village. Some people cling to the village and they want to stay there. If you've ever read the book The Alchemist, this really talks about it. And then even in the book The Prophet, this mentality of people not wanting the people to leave the village. And I think that it is brought up again in, the hero's journey. So the passage goes on to talk about how God wanted Moses to get everybody nice and purified and clean their clothes. And then he was going to have them all gather at the base of Mount Sinai. But no one was allowed to touch the mountain. Not even an animal, or they would be put to death, because God was going to descend on the mountain in a cloud of smoke and speak to Moses with all the people so that they can hear him and witness and know that like these are going to be the commandments, and like they're going to see something that they know that this was like a God that did this. So the smoke descended upon the mountain. The mountain was on fire, and this like cataclysmic, explosive voice was coming out of it. And that's when, God was giving Moses the commandments and all that. And he was trying to get the people closer. And Moses was like, well, you told nobody to come up here. And they were like, well, go get Aaron. Yo, go get Aaron. He can come up here. Go get Aaron to hang out. So during that whole thing, part of the ceremony where Moses consecrated the people was that if they so choose to keep God's commandments, that they would be set aside as his chosen, cherished people, that they would understand and keep his laws and be honest and have that special relationship. So I thought it was interesting when I saw this mountain. Immediately I thought of Mount Sinai and being called out of the ordinary, right? I mean, if you're watching this video, you're not the same as the people who don't watch any of these things and they're not interested in it at all, right? Like there's a certain amount of people in this world that are like really into this kind of thing, and then other people who are just like, wait, what's going on? Like what, like let's talk about this Sunday's football game dip that we're making. You know what I mean? So leaving the village versus being the person to stay in the village. So we have gained all of this experience and wisdom and knowledge. And now it is time, we are being called to now step out into this new opportunity to leave the village once more and use all of the wisdom and discernment and understanding that we've attained and now make it real and make it truth and actually elevate sparks of light by bringing it into the 3D. By being the embodiment of this change. And now instead of reacting in your old negative ways, you've put it into it and it's no longer a pattern or a habit, and you've broken it, and now you have changed your old negativity into positivity. And so that in that you've done spiritual alchemy. So the invitation to leave the village is going to offer so much to learn from. The Page of Pentacles is an enthusiastic student, someone who is like really eager to learn and to grow and, you know, to study and be devoted to that study, almost to the degree that sometimes the Page of Pentacles can hold themselves back and be a little bit overly perfectionistic, and feel like they are not ready to like go out and execute yet. So we're definitely setting out on a new cycle. Whatever we are being called to, it's asking us once again to leave the village so that we can take all that we've learned and put it into practice out in the gauntlet. And just remembering that what we bring back to the village is every bit as important. So coming back to the village is every bit as important as leaving it in the first place. Because the village people don't leave. And so it's up to you, like the hermit goes up the mountain, gets the message from God and brings it back down, holding the light, right? The hermit goes up and down the mountain. I know the way. I've done this before. I know where we're going. I know how to get there. I know why. I know the reasons. I can tell you stories along the way, but I am the hermit. I know the way. I am here. I have been elevated. I've been awakened. I am now coming to share this with you so that you know you can learn the way. So, yes, we are being invited onto another hero's journey. We're going to be putting into practice all the things that we've learned and all the ways that we've grown. And it's going to be another leg of even deeper self-discovery. And we're going to be learning things all over again. But we're going to go out on this adventure for the purpose of bringing more back to the village. We're going and getting more experience this time. We're elevating and transcending even more of the pieces of ourselves. And so being able to go out this time around with this level of perspective, it's like there's so much that can be attained and brought back, you know? I mean, think about when you go to another country or different countries, a whole bunch. Or even like back in the days of the explorers, they would go out and they would bring back spices. And they would bring back stories of other cultures and other foods and dress and customs and things that people had never thought about before and they weren't exposed to. And so you're broadening the minds of the people who won't do it themselves just by exposing them to the things that you've experienced. Just by radiating your light around you, it affects others. So it's important that like your growth not only benefits you, but it actually spills out into the world around you, even if you don't think it's making a difference. And then the desert. We love to see this. I just thought this was funny because so in racy, kind of like gossipy tarot, the Queen of Wands is, she's a hot ticket, she's out there. She's a hot number, very charismatic, very flirtatious, thirsty Thursday girl, like starving like Marvin, you know what I'm saying? Like the desert. if you've been, in dry times, if you know what I mean. Like, don't let your Queen of Wands get the best of you, right? Don't fall prey to, I don't know, doing anything hasty, because you need to stick it out in the desert for now. There's a lot to teach you. But yeah, enough of that. If you guys know what I'm saying, like, don't get too hasty out there. Take your time with things. But just in general, the desert is the wilderness, right? The Israelites, when they left Egypt, they were out in the desert. They were out in the wilderness. When you leave a certain way of life, it's not like everything is just all of a sudden like you're just delivered and it's just like, oh, okay, now it's all better. There's a process. There's growing pains. There's a learning curve, which is the desert. It's all of the tests and the trials and the challenges and the temptations that come with being, thrust into life and then trying to do things differently than you always had, going against your very learned and deeply ingrained defense mechanisms, right? It's hard to do. So don't be wary of the desert, because that which has not killed us has made us stronger. And it's the heat of the desert that has brought about the radiance that comes from the kind of charisma that, not like the Queen of Wands, like, she's not just a hoe, but like the Queen of Wands is magnetic, confident, charismatic, popular, warm, friendly, fun, really good at multitasking, is good at like being industrious and domestic. Like the Queen of Wands can like juggle a lot and she can get a lot done. She's got a lot of energy, right? She's got a lot of passion. She's very flirty, very fun, very like, I can't think of like who I would compare this to as like a famous person, but yeah, a lot of like very fiery, passionate energy. So I think that just keep this up even in the desert, because the desert will nourish us. There are certain things that we can't change unless we're put under a certain amount of heat and pressure. There are like ways that we just can't grow unless we have enough heat and pressure. That's the way evolution works. Even Jesus, when Jesus needed to prepare for Passover, knowing that he was preparing himself to be a sacrifice, he needed to go to the desert and be completely stripped of everything, and face that temptation, face the adversary head on, and be tempted to anger, to lust, to power, to it all, but be able to withstand that, to withstand the heat, to withstand the dryness, to be able to be strong in the face of hunger, thirst, vast landscapes with nothing in sight. It makes me think of my days in production, when things would get really slow down. And if you don't have the trust muscles and the faith build up, or just a certain threshold for uncertainty, it was brutal. Because you're sitting there going, okay, my money's depleting, I have none coming in. And even if I have a job, it's gonna take like a month, 2 weeks to a month, to 6 weeks, to even 8 weeks to get paid. So you really have to trust. And otherwise you're just sitting in anxiety all the time. So yeah, I got a very thick skin in the desert. I was there for 13 years. And so yeah, I mean, I'm like, water. So yeah, maybe you've been in the desert long enough to where you're like, all right, I've acclimated. I'm a Queen of Wands. I can deal with this. But either way, if you've been before and you find yourself back again, I don't know. It's like now when challenge comes and things come that are unexpected and unpleasant and difficult, I look at them different than I used to. But I do think that we are on the other side of darkness and chaos. And I think that we're just now like finishing that journey. right? Because what's on the other side of the desert and the wilderness is the promised land. And so if we can avoid doing what the Israelites did and fighting with ourselves and going in circles for 40 years, we will be allowed into the promised land. But we have to surrender to that process, right? The soul process of going on that journey, right? Of self-discovery and facing the ego, all the monsters that come with it, and all of those fears and insecurities, and answering the call to adventure. And if we do that, it's like there's a lot of healing coming. The star card is a card of hope and of healing, but it's also a story of, or a card that talks about dreams coming true, like in a major way. Like 9 of Cups is a card about like your wishes fulfilled, or like a small goal is coming true, or like your little dreams coming true. But the star card is like, really, everything's gonna be okay. It's like a big, like, don't worry. It's like you're at the end of the darkness and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And just wait, be patient in the process, because healing can be messy. It can be itchy. It can be uncomfortable. But it's just that last bit of discomfort that we kind of have to go through in order to get to the other side of it. It's like the only way, there's no way around the desert. The only way is through. And so we're here and we're already in it. And I think that we're already well into it and we're handling it well. The hand is reaching out to the moon. I feel like we're about in this phase right now anyway. And we're on the precipice of, I believe, a Gemini new moon. So that should be really fun and interesting and great energy coming in. Yes. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. I do want to read Gnosis. Okay. Gnosis. Innermost knowing, mystic truths. True knowledge is not found in facts and figures, in scholarly books on library shelves. Rather, Gnosis points to the deep and timeless archetypal wisdom that rises from the felt experience of having touched the unknown with every one of the senses. Those who are drawn to Gnosis find themselves in esoteric studies, likely involving mysticism, alchemy, healing, or perhaps science. Knowing is their calling. Not knowing is their job description. You have to be comfortable in the face of uncertainty. That knowing, that deep knowing, that certainty, it's like knowing without knowing what. Just like, I don't know, but I just know. That. Where was I? No matter how far the alchemists take their studies, they come to the ultimate conclusion that facts slip toward mystery, and soon the mystery results in facts. This card signifies a knowing that is life-changing. Once you experience it, you are forever changed and become a guardian of Gnosis. The eternal mystery is calling you. Study your passion in the deepest way available to you. Those who say they know, don't. Those who say they don't know, know. Socrates said, a wise man knows he knows little. This card relates to the riddle and the shapeshifter. All concern themselves with revealing mystic truths. Interesting. When light, contemplating the mystery, unanswerable questions. When dark, over-intellectualizing and literalizing, asking others. When dark. It's like when people go to like a million different people for advice about the same subject, and it's like they know what the real answer is, but they just don't want to face that answer, and then they keep going to everybody else because they don't trust themselves, or they just don't want to listen to that answer. Let's see, go deeper. Bruce Naumann's The True Artist Helps the World by Revealing Mystic Truths. Always like her little assignments. Alrighty, you guys. Well, I hope that you have a good week. I think that we're going to feel stable and strong and certain. And when challenges inevitably present themselves, just pause and breathe deeply. And unless it's like obviously like an urgent emergency, like life and death, or like the water heater like busted or something, cancel, clear, delete. Don't let that happen. But like, take your time. Don't rush to make any moves, any decisions, or anything like that. Just give it time this week to breathe and sit and practice that feeling of certainty, or finding a feeling of inner calm, if you can. And try not to rush through desert moments, because the transformation and change, that's when the big bulk of it happens. I mean, yeah, when we're happy, we're comfortable, like we do, it's like polishing, you know, we can like fine tune a little bit. But really, like, the major changes happen when life is just like totally throwing us a curveball and we're left to sort of like, I don't know, face mountains and Goliaths and, you know, have to figure out what that is going to involve. And it's not even like figuring out, but it's like learning how to listen to that inner wisdom and that inner guidance, with a sense of knowing and trust. Well, all right, y'all. I've talked for too long. I was going to try to make this a shorter one as usual, but I never do as usual. Forgive me. I'll try to be less long-winded. Maybe. Maybe not. Y'all be good, but not too good. Ciao.